Dementia Researcher with a blog and a rating.
I'm well aware I was one of the fortunate ones, going into mental health nursing in the 1980s when the perks included enrolment into an incredible pension scheme, one that is unrecognisable today and which I paid little attention to at the time. It was that mental health officer status that resulted in allowing me to retire at the age of 55 on a full pension, and although retirement seemed distant at the beginning of my career, it became a reality 5 years ago. In this blog, I'm going to share my story of how fate played a role in my path into research and how it made retirement a far easier decision. Back to the 80s. Shortly after qualifying, I quickly found my niche and I became a community psychiatric nurse working with older adults. Although at the time the label for our patients was elderly, and by the time I left I was providing 3 nurse-led clinics in GP practices in the Scottish borders, offering easy access mental health assessments. I won't insult those reading this by suggesting I wishing I hadn't retired. That part I highly recommend if the opportunity arises, but what made my transition painless was fate and my involvement in research, because whilst I did leave, it's my connection to research that brought me back. So let's go back to where it all began. About a decade before I was able to dance out of the team singing George Michael's Freedom, an opportunity arose regarding a 1-day-a-week clinical study officer or CSO position with the recently established Scottish Dementia Clinical Research Network or SDCRN. As the name suggests, SDCRN is an organisation put in place by the Scottish Government and funded through the Chief Scientist's Office to promote and facilitate dementia research in Scotland. This recognised the growing importance of dementia research and was trying to address the issue of there being little research participation beyond that being delivered in the private sector. At this point, my enthusiasm for my role was at its peak. I had several projects ongoing, having just completed a community mental health nursing degree and was undergoing independent prescriber training as well as holding down a substantive post I had no intention of adding another string to my bow. I therefore dismissed the idea of applying. However, this is when fate entered and no other colleagues put themselves forward. I reluctantly applied as I felt strongly this post should be best filled with a nurse within the mental health for older adult team. I also felt it was important that everyone should have the opportunity to be involved in research, including rural communities. The SDCRN, who I presume saw my passion rather than research experience, which at this stage was zero, offered me the position and my relationship with research began. At this point, I would like to say I cannot emphasise enough how grateful I was for this opportunity and how I do not regret it for a moment. Not only did the knowledge and insight gained from research involvement vastly complement my clinical skills, but the understanding of the research journey boosted, some may say inflated, my confidence. It encouraged me to push forward as a more autonomous clinician promoting nurse-led services. Research involvement also whet my academic appetite and spurred me on to complete a Master's in Health Research at the University of Stirling, something I would not have considered previously. Again, this deepened my knowledge and skills to be a better clinician and helped me to confidently produce evidence on any clinical decision made. Over the preceding years, the SDCRN developed its reputation as the primary point of contact in Scotland for those wishing to carry out clinical trials related to dementia. And as it's Scotland-wide, with input from agreement from most health authorities. It's also reduced the red tape that can be associated with study delivery. I grant you, I may be biased, but like many good organisations, SDCRN has not remained static since it was set up in 2009. The staff's enthusiasm and assertive leadership have helped it surge forward and filled the gaps in dementia research which had long existed in Scotland. After expanding its scope beyond dementia, it was renamed the Neuroprogressive and Dementia Network, and under this umbrella has spearheaded initiatives such as permission to contact, a research register of those wishing to take part in research, Partners in Research, its patient and public involvement group, and ENRICH Scotland, promoting research in care homes and jointly with Edinburgh University promoted the maintaining the Alzheimer's Scotland Brain Tissue Donation Bank. Getting back to the point, by retirement, I'd had the privilege of playing a small part in many of the major clinical drug trials targeting dementia in the 2000s. I had coordinated academic studies, acted as a principal investigator on some other non-pharmaceutical trials, and my knowledge of research was unrecognisable compared with 10 years before, when fate took my hand. So when retirement came, I took the obligatory couple of months break to travel, volunteer, find myself. However, I was grateful to be allowed to return to the network and continue my involvement, now focusing on ENRICH Scotland, putting my previous years of community care and care home involvement to good use. 5 years on, and with 2 more nursing revalidations under my belt, I still look back and thank FET for sending me down the research pathway. I know I would not have been as such a confident clinician had I stuck in my lane, and retirement would have come and I would have likely whistled to George Michael, but in what direction would I have gone, I'm really not sure. If fate is still looking on, I hope it gives me several more years. So if you're nearing retirement or have already retired, give some thought to getting involved in research delivery. Your research knowledge may be lacking, but your clinical experience you possess is invaluable. And if you're in the UK, there will be clinical research networks near you, and they're always looking for nurses to help deliver their work.
Thank you for listening. Join the Dementia Research bloggers and share your own views.